I think demographics is a real issue where people are not having kids in a lot of countries. And very often they'll say, oh, I'll solve it with immigration. Immigration from where? If Europe has an average, or many parts of Europe have an average of a 50 or 60, they're only at 50 or 60% of what's needed for replacement, or China for that matter. They're at half replacement rate. Where exactly are we going to find 600 million people to replace the ones that were never born? I think people are going to have to regard, to some degree, the notion of having kids as almost a social duty, within reason. I mean, just if you can and you're so inclined, you should. It's like otherwise civilization will just die, literally. The birth rate is strongly correlated to, it's inversely correlated to wealth, inversely correlated to education, and correlated to religion. So the more religious you are, the less educated, and the poorer you are, the more kids you will have. And this is true between countries and within countries. In the US, the highest birth rate is in Utah with the Mormons. Yeah. I think if you're saying what are threats to civilization, the lack of people is obviously a threat to civilization. We are going to face in the mid part of the century, and particularly the latter part of the century, a demographic implosion, the likes of which we haven't seen, including the Black Plague. The math is obvious. When did China ever experience a 50% reduction in its population? Never. I mean, basically, pre-writing, okay, because no one's ever written of such a thing. Even the Black Plague, I mean, Black Plagues would go through, I think that they might have demolished like a quarter, but never a half. Yeah. And yet Spain, birth rate of 50%. It's as though someone went through and killed half the population, or at least of the future population. Yeah. There's something better happen to turn this around, because otherwise you have an inverted demographic pyramid. And it's going to, at this rate, the only thing that'll be left will be robots. 3 generations of 50% birth rate, 50% replacement rate, gets you to 12% of where you were. And those poor 12%, all they're going to be doing is taking care of their grandparents. I mean, eventually there just won't be people at that rate. The other, I think religious extremism is obviously a concern. If that grows over time, particularly if it's a sort of a Luddite form of religious extremism. Anti-technology, right, anti-science, right, exactly. Then that's an obvious threat. Yeah, I won't mention the third one.
You mind, you have to say it.
I hope the AI is nice to us.
Are robots going to take our jobs, everybody's jobs in the future? Or how much do you see artificial intelligence coming into the workplace?
Well, first of all, I think on the artificial intelligence front, I have exposure to the very most cutting edge AI, and I think people should be really concerned about it. I keep sounding the alarm bell, but until people see like robots going down the street killing people, like they don't know how to react, because it seems so ethereal. I think we should be really concerned about AI, and I think we should. AI is a rare case where I think we need to be proactive in regulation instead of reactive, because I think by the time we are reactive in AI regulation, it's too late. Normally the way regulations are set up is that a whole bunch of bad things happen, there's a public outcry, and then after many years, a regulatory agency is set up to regulate that industry. And there's a bunch of opposition from companies who don't like being told what to do by regulators. Anyway, it takes forever. That in the past has been bad, but not
something which represented a fundamental risk to the existence of civilization. AI is a fundamental risk to the existence of human civilization, in a way that car accidents, airplane crashes, faulty drugs, or bad food were not. They were not. They were harmful to a set of individuals within society, of course, but they were not harmful to society as a whole. AI is a fundamental existential risk for human civilization, and I don't think people fully appreciate that. It's not fun being regulated. It's not, it can be pretty irksome, but in the car business, we get regulated by Department of Transport, by EPA, and a bunch of others, and there's regulatory agencies in every country. In space, we get regulated by FAA, but if you ask the average person, hey, do you want to get rid of the FAA and just like take a chance on manufacturers not cutting corners on aircraft because profits were down that quarter? I was like, hell no. That sounds terrible. So, I think even people who are pretty extremely like libertarian free market, they'd be like, yeah, we should probably have somebody keeping an eye on the aircraft companies, making sure they build a good aircraft and good cars and that kind of thing. So, I think there's a role for regulators. That's very important. And I'm against overregulation for sure. But man, I think we better get on that with AI pronto. So there'll certainly be a lot of job disruption. Because what's going to happen is robots will be able to do everything better than us. I'm including, all of us, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what to do about this. This is really like the scariest problem to me, I'll tell you. Yeah, so I really think we need government regulation here, just because this is, ensuring the public good is served. Because you've got companies that are racing, that they kind of have to race to build AI, or they're going to be made uncompetitive. Essentially, if your competitor is racing to build AI and you don't, they will crush you. So then you're like, we don't want to be crushed. So, I guess we need to build it too. That's where you need the regulators to come in and say, hey guys, you all need to really, just pause and make sure this is safe. And like when it's cool and and the regulators are convinced that it's safe to proceed, then you can go. But otherwise, slow down. But you kind of need the regulators to do that for all the teams in the game. Otherwise the shareholders will be saying like, hey, why aren't you developing AI faster? Because your competitor is. I'm like, okay, we better do that. Anyway, so it's like, there's like something like 12% of jobs are transport. Transport will be one of the first things to go fully autonomous. But when I say everything, like the robots will be able to do everything, bar nothing.
I wrote this down, that you said that artificial intelligence is the fundamental existential risk facing civilization. Did I get that close enough?
In my opinion, it is the biggest risk that we face as a civilization is artificial intelligence.
And so, to a group of leaders, what would you advise that how should we be addressing something that's such a large landscape and yet obviously so important?
I think that one of the roles of government is to ensure the public good, and to that dangers to the public are addressed. So that hence the regulatory thing. I think the first order of business would be to try to learn as much as possible. To understand the nature of the issues, to look closely at the progress that is being made and the remarkable achievements of artificial intelligence. I mean, last year, Go, which is quite a difficult game to beat, that people thought would never be beaten with by a computer, that a computer would either never beat the best human player or that it was 20 years away. And last year, AlphaGo, which was done by DeepMind, which is a kind of a Google subsidiary, absolutely crushed the world's best player. And now it can play the top 50 simultaneously and crush them all. So, just like that pace of progress is remarkable. And you can see more and more coming out. I think the robotics, you can see robots that can learn to walk from nothing, within hours, like way faster than any biological being. But the thing that's most dangerous is, and it's the hardest to kind of wrap, kind of get your arms around because it's not a physical thing, is kind of a deep intelligence in the network. He said, well, what harm could a deep intelligence in the network do? So, well, it could start a war by doing fake news and spoofing email accounts and fake press releases, and just by manipulating information. The pen is mightier than the sword. I mean, as an example, I want to emphasize, I do not think this actually occurred. This is purely a hypothetical that I do. I'm digging my grave here. But there was that second Malaysian airliner that was shot down on the Ukrainian-Russian border, and that really amplified tensions between Russia and the EU in a massive way. Well, let's say if you had an AI that was where the AI's goal was to maximize the value of a portfolio of stocks. One of the ways to maximize value would be to go long on defense, short on consumer, start a war. And then how could it do that? Well, hack into the Malaysian Airlines aircraft routing server, route it over a war zone, then send an anonymous tip that an enemy aircraft is flying overhead right now.
Reading and we have reading genetics more or less, but writing genetics and AI.
You have a confidence that we have the capacity to do those things, the human species.
We're doing them.
But I think if it reaches the threshold where it's as smart as the smartest, most inventive human, then it really could be, a matter of days before it's smarter than the sum of humanity.
You've given some of these examples of how AI can be an existential threat, but I still don't understand as policymakers what type of regulations beyond slow down, which typically policymakers don't get in front of entrepreneurs or innovators.
Well, I think the first order of business would be to gain insight. Right now, the government does not even have insight. And I think the right order of business would be to stand up a regulatory agency, initial goal, gain insight into the status of AI activity, make sure the situation is understood. Once it is, then put regulations in place to ensure public safety. That's it. I think once there is awareness, people will be extremely afraid, as they should be.